Whispers from Below, a horror podcast by Justin W. Geis. Scary stories, both real and fake. Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 2 of Whispers from Below, a podcast by a madman for madmen. I'm your resident psychopath, Justin W. Geis, and today's topic of discussion is Leprechaun 2. So for those of you that are new to the show, I announced last year that I was going to make this a annual thing that I do around the time of St. Paddy's Day, where I watch the Leprechaun movies because there's like 7 of them and they're all terrible. So I thought it would be funny to kind of like watch all of them like once a year and make it kind of like a little annual series. So I finally got around to watching Leprechaun 2. I wanted to start my season off with a serial killer and not a movie. So that's why I didn't do it last week. But this week, baby, we watched Leprechaun 2. And boy, oh boy, is it just so bad. This is an episode that's pretty okay, I would say, for most people to listen to. There's nothing in this that's like jarring or like so horribly grotesque and awful that somebody's gonna like have an issue with it or be scarred. Like, I really don't think that that's going to be the case. So this is a younger listener friendly episode. Without further ado, let's get into it. So Leprechaun 2 is a movie that came out in 1994. It is considered a horror comedy slasher film. It's directed by Rodman Flender, and Warwick Davis reprises his role. If all of you remember him from his original role as the Leprechaun in the first film, he reprises his role in the second film. It opens on the cheesiest green lettering and pan flute music, and it says Ireland, once upon a time. And like, already we're off to a bad start. Like, I literally paused the movie 2 seconds in and was like cackling because I was like, I already know that this is about to go so south so quickly. Like, this film is going to be so bad. So anyway, it opens on that, and then there's thunder crashing, there's a lightning, and then you see this dude running around. The makeup is rough, y'all. The makeup is definitely rough. So this dude is like running. He like trips and falls. He like turns around. This man is being played by James Lancaster, for any of you that are interested in like actors and where they are now or whatever. Being played by James Lancaster, and then he gets like choked, quote unquote, by this like magic collar that he has placed on him. He's technically like the slave of the leprechaun is what you like find out. But he has the worst Irish accent like I think I've ever heard. Like, he's just like not at all good at dialect. And it's very apparent, even though we're like supposed to be in Ireland. And the makeup that's on Warwick Davis for the leprechaun is like the edges are like peeling up and the paint job is weird. Like, he doesn't look right. And in the first film, at least, I was like, yeah, this is an old film, but I can recognize that, like, at least they did okay with, like, the makeup job. But, like, they didn't even do okay with the makeup in this one. Like, there's so many edges, and, like, it's just, like, not it, y'all. So then you find out that it is the leprechaun's 1000th birthday, which means that he can claim a bride. Also, his birthday is St. Patrick's Day. So, just so we're keeping track of the timeline here. He says if she sneezes 3 times without someone saying God bless you, then she becomes his bride. So she has to sneeze 3 times, and he can make that happen like however he wishes. And then the leprechaun is like, hey, if I get married to this beautiful woman, then, I'm going to make sure that you're free, my slave. I'll free you because I'll have my bride to do my bidding. And he's like, oh, all right, like, this sounds like a good idea. And then I just wrote fake beard alert in all caps because they like zoom in on this dude's face and it's like so clearly not a real beard. It's like a lace front beard. and it's like poorly put on, and it's like painted, or maybe it's like his facial hair, but they like painted, like it's such a clear line. Like it's just awful. Whatever they did with his beard should never be done again, ever. It was the worst thing I've ever seen. And then you find out that the wee lass is actually his daughter, like the slave. It's William's daughter. So then he's like, no, 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 you can't take her. Like she's not, she's not available. Like you can't have my daughter. You're an awful person, whatever. So the leprechaun like blows some wind in her direction that like makes her sneeze once. She sneezes twice, and then he's like, please, please, please. She sneezes a third time. William says, God bless you. And then the leprechaun like runs away. He's like, I'm sorry, God bless you. And then like runs away. And then the leprechaun like snaps his neck. And he promises that he's going to hunt for the fairest offspring, and then in the next 1,000 years he will claim her as his bride. Then we have some lettering that says 1,000 years later, because obviously we're in like 94. We meet Bridget, who is played by Siobhan Durkin, and Cody, who is played by Charlie Heath. Charlie, or I guess Cody. We'll talk about them by character name. So Cody is convincing some tourists to take what is called the Dark Side Spooky Tour, where they kind of like drive them around like what appears to be Hollywood, and sort of it's like very clearly a scam, but he's selling it really, really well. Is basically the gist of it, and it's in like a hearse. That it's like in a car that like looks like a hearse, but it's like a car. He's convincing tourists to get in there. There's some really, really bad acting on Siobhan's part. She is just like not. She's like pretty, I guess, but she's a really, really bad actress, which makes the film even more chef's kiss, just perfection. Really like poor, like piss poor acting, like just so bad. I wrote bad acting, typical 90s. I feel like in the 90s, a lot of horror movies didn't really have standards. And so you find a lot of like older horror movies that just have like awful actors. But I feel like even today, you get like horror movies for some reason either have really great, fantastic actors or really bad ones. And unfortunately, this movie suffers from both. Poor Cody is like carrying the movie on his back, and Siobhan is just like not doing anything for him. Or Bridget, sorry, her character name is Bridget. So anyway, Bridget and Cody are kind of like dating. And then you find out that the kid, Cody, is sort of partnered / like his like father figure is sort of like this drunk guy who is named Mortimer and is played by Sandy Barron. And Morty is kind of like a drunk older man, but he's also like the father figure for Cody. And he usually does the tours and stuff like that. It is St. Patrick's Day. This is important to note. They find Morty in a bar, and to get into the bar, they walk under a ladder, which is bad luck. And they comment on it. She's like, we can't walk under that. And he's like, why? And she's like, bad luck. And then he's like, come on, Bridget. And then they like run under. And that was like a spot on impression. And it never comes back. Like the bad luck thing, like it doesn't come back. Like they brought it up once as like a weird like little thing, and then it doesn't come back ever. The way that they get Morty to sort of like sober up, quote unquote, he dunks Morty's head into ice water. They like fill the sink up with water, pour ice in it, and the bartender like hands him ice. Like this is something that clearly like happens a lot. And then they dunk his head into it, and it sort of like wakes him up. And then Morty is like too drunk to do it. So Cody has to end up giving the Dark Side tour. But him and Bridget were supposed to be going on a date. So Bridget is a little pissed off. And she's in the front seat with him, handing him the wrong cue cards for his like spooky tour, and stuff like that. Just sort of like being like a typical like upset 90s girl. And he is trying to like make the best of it with her. He's like, come on, we'll just do this quick tour and then we'll be done with it. Like, blah, blah, blah. We can go over to the go-kart course after, because that's like really what they're trying to do, is go to the go-kart course and go on a date. But it doesn't quite work out that way because of the tour. He is a very bad tour guide, as we soon find out. But one of the places that he takes them to is the ruins of Houdini's mansion, quote unquote, where a homeless man has set up shop. And there's a big jump scare where he like pops into the window and then Cody like drives away really quickly. But you see the homeless man sort of like hang out. And then he walks over to this like tree in the ruins and like sets up shop. And you see that this tree is actually a gift from Ireland, where, of course, our leprechaun is currently living. The leprechaun steals the homeless man's whiskey and then emerges from the tree, yells about the whiskey being Canadian, and makes a big deal about how the only whiskey is Irish whiskey. And then he proceeds to rip out the homeless man's gold tooth. And the effect is, oh my God, it's so bad. I don't know how many times I can say that the effects in this film are so bad, but like truly they just kind of like put fake blood over a tooth, like over his tooth, to try to make it look like it wasn't there, but it's like very clearly like still in his mouth. Like they didn't do a good job of like hiding the bottom part of his tooth so that you could like still see it. It's so bad. And then he places the gold tooth in this floating like pot of gold that like appears with him. Then I wrote in all caps, go-kart time. So 2 dudes are fighting over her. I don't remember the name of the one guy. I don't think I wrote it down. But you meet a little like Rottweiler dog. He's like a little guard dog of the place, and he's very, very sweet. And then he says like, it'll be different next time. And then Bridget turns around and says, what makes you think there will be a next time? And then like goes off with this other dude to go have like a go-kart night. And the dude like takes off of work to like hang out with her, right? And it's very clearly like he thinks she's pretty and he's trying to like make a move. So then Cody gets upset and he gets back in the car and he starts speeding, gets pulled over by the police. You find out that Morty is technically his legal guardian. And he keeps like handing flyers out to everybody. So he like makes up these stories to like get people to release Cody. And then he's like handing out flyers to everybody about like his dark side tour or whatever. Which is kind of a funny little like tidbit about like he's always trying to like sell it or like steal a pen from the police officer after using it, like just like little things like that you're like, oh, he's a con man, like ha ha ha, funny. And then the homeless man walks into the police station as Morty and Cody like randomly take a seat in the police station. Like it doesn't make sense. Like why would they sit down after like they've been released? And then the homeless man walks in and is talking about how his gold tooth got stolen by a short little leprechaun, and they're like, it's St. Patrick's Day, like send him out, boys, he's not real. And he's like, no, really, like this happened. And then Morty's like, we gotta get out of here, kid. And Cody's like, yeah, let's beat it. And then they like leave, or like something to that extent. I don't know about you, but I personally hate having to go to the grocery store. It takes up so much of my day when I could be starting a new hobby with that time, like soap carving, or collecting the sick bags out of airplanes. With Instacart, it makes grocery shopping fast and easy, all while allowing me to stay in my underwear. Instacart allows you to order all of the things you usually get from your local stores, delivered to your door in as fast as 1 hour. Not only that, but it will also give you smart suggestions for new items based off of your preferences, as well as highlight deals to help you save some money. The shoppers handpick perfect produce and make sure that your eggs get to you safely. You can get free delivery on your first order over $35 by following the link in the show notes. This also lets Instacart know that we sent you, and it helps support Whispers from Below. So if you hate grocery shopping as much as I do, try Instacart today and enjoy getting your groceries the easy way. Then we see the leprechaun like roaming about in the streets, and this man like goes to tip him in like a penny, but instead of tipping him in the penny, he sees that the man has a gold ring on his finger, so he rips off the man's finger. Yet again, it's a really bad effect. He takes the ring. Also, this is just something to keep in mind. The leprechaun like only speaks in rhymes. Truly, all of his lines rhyme, and it is just so fantastic, the whole film, to just hear these random rhymes. And then after he takes the finger, he licks it and goes, "Finger licking good." Like, what the fuck? Like, is that a KFC reference? For what? Like, why did you... It is so shocking. It's so out of left field, and it makes absolutely no sense why they would make, like, a finger-licking good joke. But it made me laugh so hard that I had to stop the movie. Like, I couldn't go on. I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing I think I've ever heard in a horror film. It was so funny. And also, like, to reiterate, chef's kiss, like perfection. So then it cuts to Cody at home. He's looking at pictures of him and Bridget together. He's watching like a romantic film and sort of like seeing himself in it. And then he sees the other dude that Bridget's with, and he's like, gosh, I wish I was there with her. Like, Bridget, don't kiss him, whatever. That sort of like angsty stuff. And then I wrote, clearly an empty pizza box. Morty is waiting at the door. The pizza man is like knocking on the door, and he's like, shh, 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 shh. Then he opens the door and he's like, 31 minutes late, the pizza's free. And then like closes the door. And he's like, all right, so now that we were over the 30-minute mark, the pizza's free. Here we go. And the pizza box is like clearly empty. Like he's throwing it around like it has no weight in it at all. And it's like making hollow sounds. Like it's not, there's nothing in that pizza box, Maria. Like we all know that pizza box is empty. And then Cody sort of decides that he has to go make things up with Bridget. So he leaves the apartment. Then we cut to Ian. That's his name. The other dude's name is Ian. Ian is like really trying to get Bridget to like invite him in because her parents aren't home, and she's like not really feeling it. And then Ian gets like pretty rapey, and Bridget like punches him and then like runs away and like gets into her house. And then I wrote, Leprechaun lures him in with boobs. The garage door like opens up, and Bridget is standing there like, I'm sorry about earlier. Let me make it up to you. And like takes her top off. Because horror movie. And then Cody is like, or Ian is like, I guess you can make it up to me. And then she's like, come on, just kiss him. And then he like starts to lean in, and then it cuts away from like the fantasy aspect of it, and he's just leaning into like two like lawnmower blades basically. So he like kisses the lawnmower blades and like dies because the leprechaun like makes him think that it's the girl, makes him think that it's Bridget, which is a pretty funny death. And then he like hangs him out front and whatever. Parents aren't home. This is key. Cody comes over. The leprechaun climbs through an open window in the background. Cody comes over and like gives her these flowers. So, the flowers are making her sneeze, quote unquote. So the leprechaun makes her sneeze 3 times. Nobody says God bless you. And then he knocks Cody out. He puts a collar on her that he keeps calling the ring. He tries to take her, but he ends up spilling his gold. And so Cody takes a piece of the gold and then like throws iron at him, which like burns him. And then him and Bridget like disappear. There's like a whole like little like mini fight scene. It's really stupid and like doesn't make sense. He then forces Bridget into his little tree home, and she tries to hit him with like a rock and escape, but you find out that like the bottom of the tree place for the leprechaun is kind of like this never-ending labyrinth that like it is totally expansive. Like the leprechaun's home is like this maze that you just like can't escape from. It's like what's the forest in Legend of Zelda that just like consistently takes you back to the same point if you like make a wrong turn? That's kind of what the leprechaun's home is like, supposedly. She comes across like some skeletons and stuff for like jump scares, and then it's bedtime for Bridget. So he kind of like wraps her up in like a blanket and like puts her on a stone slab, then like says he's gonna make like alterations for the litter of wee ones that he's gonna put inside her, then like cuts open the blanket, cuts open her shirt, and is like rubbing her stomach, being like, yes, 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 alterations. This stomach will never hold the litter. And then like, oh, we're gonna have to make alterations to your breasts because like you won't be able to suckle all the wee ones. And like, it's kind of like a really disturbing conversation, honestly, that like made me really uncomfortable. And then he realizes that he's missing one piece of gold, so he frees her so that she can change into like a fancy dress for him that she'll be in, like a traditional like Irish dress or whatever that she'll be in by the time he comes home. And he's like, I just have to go get this piece of gold and then I'll be back, my lovely bride. And she's like, yeah, 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 whatever. Then he like licks her face and it's like really gross and slobbery, like like extra slobber. Then you find out that the police are investigating the murder of Ian. And so when Cody goes to go home, the police are like talking to Morty about it. So he has to like sneak in through the fire escape. Then Cody talks to Morty about the leprechauns, and Morty is like, it's not real. Like, they're not real. You've been reading too many books. And then the leprechaun appears in the house. And so to fight him off, they like fight him with like iron, and they escape through the fire escape. And there's like iron bars on the thing on the fire escape. So when the leprechaun goes to touch them, it burns him. I'm assuming the iron burns him because it's called like, because like fool's gold, right? I don't know. I don't understand why iron burns leprechauns, but apparently it like burns him or whatever. So he like can't get out into the fire escape, and then they run to a bar on St. Patrick's Day to like escape and like hide from him. And then he goes to pee. Cody goes to pee. Morty goes to sit at the bar, and this leprechaun impersonator with a gold tooth appears, and he hands him a piece like a piece of like chocolate gold, like a gold coin, like a chocolate gold coin sort of thing. And it's supposed to be like a, oh my gosh, is the leprechaun gonna come in and attack him? Like, is this what's about to happen? Like, we've seen the whole movie. It's like supposed to be kind of like a jump scary moment, but it doesn't quite like reach that point. So then Cody starts to connect the tree in Houdini's ruins to the leprechaun. And then there's this hilarious scene where like Cody's talking to him about the tree, and Morty is just sitting and staring into the distance. And then they're like, we got to get out before he finds us. And then he's like, he's already here. And then it like cuts to the leprechaun sitting like across the bar, like taking a drink and just like staring at them like you would see in like a mob movie. Oh my god, it was so good. It was so, like, what a perfect scene. I would change nothing about it. Everything about it was perfect. So then Morty starts a drinking contest with the leprechaun. And then it cuts to, meanwhile, Bridget is Hansel and Greteling her way through the home. So she's like got a bunch of stones happening. She's like got a bunch of them in her dress, and she's like dropping them to try to like find a way out. But the stones like disappear every time that she drops them. Then cut to drunk leprechaun, very, very drunk leprechaun. They capture him, and they're like, hey, tell us where she is, whatever. Morty's like, no, 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 I got this. And then the leprechaun hits him over the head with a bottle and runs out the door and like escapes. Bridget, cut back to Bridget, she's like digging in the floor, and she finds this locked box that has like an ice pick in it. And she's like, I got this. I'm going to kill him with an ice pick. Oh my gosh. Then we cut to the leprechaun at a coffee shop, like drinking coffee to like sober up. And we meet the best character in the film that is only in the film for like 5 minutes. This homosexual barista is literally the best part of the film. I wrote, homosexual barista is the best part of the film. And then two lines down, I wrote, homosexual barista is the best part of the film. And then 2 more lines down, I wrote, homosexual barista is the best part of the film, in all caps, because truly this man is just amazing. Like a great actor, and is also so sassy and like hilarious. Like, I just love this scene. He's just like, making fun of the leprechaun for like being a leprechaun and like getting drunk. Like he's just like making fun of him the whole time, and he's so sassy, and it's an amazing scene. And then he dies, of course, because the leprechaun gets upset, and he dies by getting like hot steam blown in his face from the coffee maker, like the espresso machine. And that's how he dies, which is kind of a tragic death, but also like, you know, you're a barista, you're gonna die by coffee. It seems pretty fitting, I think. Then we have the giant safe. So basically, like earlier in the film at the go-kart course, there is a giant safe that they open up. And they sort of like throw stuff in it, and then they like move on. But like clearly there's this huge giant safe. It's like half the size of a human being. Like a normal size, it's like half the size of Cody, and Cody appears to be, in my opinion, about like 5'9", and it's like up to like his mid rib. So it's like a pretty like huge safe, right? And then they realize that it's iron, so they're gonna like go back and like steal the giant safe. So kind of missed that plot point for a second, and they don't really like explain it. They just sort of like end up back at the go-kart course to like grab the safe. The giant safe like apparently like rolls because they go to push it and it just like doesn't make any noise and just like slides across the floor. So apparently it's on like wheels or whatever. And they open up and they empty it out because they keep underneath like the ashtray in there. They keep like a code thing in case like anybody forgets it. And Cody knows that for some reason. Maybe they showed it earlier in the film and I missed it, but he knows that for some reason and opens up the safe. And then the leprechaun shows up and starts like beating up Morty. He scares the dog away. It's just like a whole thing. And then they lock him up in the safe. Meanwhile, there's like a security guard that like arrests Morty and then like goes to go into the thing and gets like murdered by the leprechaun. There's like a whole thing. He gets like knocked out. There's like all this stuff that's happening. And then Morty, like they finally capture the leprechaun and they're like, let's go get Bridget. And Morty like locks Cody up in a room and starts asking for 3 wishes from the leprechaun. He's like, I want all of your gold. So the leprechaun puts all the gold into his stomach. And then he's like, oh my God, my stomach hurts. You get it out. And he's like, do you wish that? And he's like, yes, I wish that you would just get the gold out of me. So he gets the gold out of him. And then he's like, I just wish that you were out of there. I wish you out of there so that you could get the gold out. Or I think the second wish is like, I wish you were out of there so that you could get the gold out. So he wishes him out of the safe. And then the third wish is to get the gold out of his stomach. And then he dies. The leprechaun kills him. So all in all, the leprechaun uses the 3 wishes to his advantage. He uses Morty's like greed, in order to like kill him, I guess. Like he uses like his greed and his sort of like gluttony or whatever to sort of like kill him, which is kind of strange. And then you find out that the security officer was not, in fact, dead, simply knocked out. And he shows up and he goes to arrest Cody because he's like, hey, I know that you killed people. Because they think that he killed Ian. So they're like, we know that you killed Ian and like the barista, and like we're gonna arrest you for that and whatever. And he's like, what do you mean? Like, I literally haven't done any of that. And he's like, no, you totally have. You totally have, my dude. And he's like, okay, whatever. So then he arrests him and he goes to take him out into the go-kart course. But then the leprechaun has a death machine go-kart. And there's this whole, like, it looks like it's straight out of Borderlands. Like, I wrote Borderlands-esque go-kart, question mark. And he drives over it, the officer, and like kills the officer. Then he goes to drive through Cody and literally goes through Cody. Because as long as Cody is holding onto the gold coin, he can't be killed by the leprechaun, is something that you discover. Because whatever, plot point, I guess. So now there's this weird added plot point where the leprechaun has been trying to hurt him this whole time to get the gold back. but apparently like can't actually hurt him to get the gold back. Whatever. And then the leprechaun like disappears. And Cody is like, I know what I have to do. So then he goes and he grabs a bunch of like iron stuff and he drives up to the tree and he says, what an iconic line. He says, have you had your iron today? Like, what, dude? That's so bad. Like, in no world is that a good line in any way. It's just not a good line. It it's what we call a bad line. It's just bad writing, but it's so funny. Meanwhile, the leprechaun comes home and he's like, I couldn't get the gold, blah, blah, blah. Then Bridget's like, oh, well, it's our wedding night. Like, why don't we, like, let's fuck, basically. She goes to seduce him and then goes to, like, stab him with the ice pick, but it just bends when it touches him. And he's like, that was my favorite. I think it's called, like, an owl, like AWL, all, or something like that. But it looks like an ice pick, so I'm calling it an ice pick. He's like, that was my favorite ice pick, like, from my grandpa or whatever. And then there's like a random like 90s guitar that like shows up at some point in the plot. Like it shows up at a point where like there's already background music and it seems like it was kind of like an editing mistake. Like it shouldn't be there. It's really random and like uncomfortable. And I'm not really sure why it's there, but whatever, I guess. And then he sort of is like, wait, it seems like we have a visitor. And so he kind of like forces Bridget's neck, like the ring neck thing, onto the wall. It like magnets to the wall or whatever. And then he's like, I'll be back, don't move. And then, green roaches. So he breaks into the tree. Cody breaks into the tree and he's walking down the thing. And then these roaches fall on him and they're green and nasty looking, like fluorescent green. They look disgusting. He starts getting choked out by a skull, like a skeleton, and he defeats him. He beats up the skeleton. He's having a good time in the fight. Bridget uses her feet in order to get the bent ice pick and sort of like pick the lock. And like it keeps cutting between the two for like dramatic effect. And then she picks the lock on the ring. And then there's like a bunch of like running that happens basically. Like he like hits the leprechaun or whatever. Or like says he won't give him the gold. And then him and Bridget sort of like run. And then there's just like a bunch of running. And every time they run, they end back in the same room. And it's supposed to look like they ran away and then like came back, but there's very clearly like camera cuts and then it cuts to them like coming back. But it's like they were trying to do the thing where it's like, if we keep the lighting the same and keep the camera at the same angle, no one will tell that it's a cut and then it'll look like they just came back. But they like didn't do a good job of it. And the camera's at like a slightly different angle or like the lighting is like slightly different. So you can tell that it's a cut before they run back. It's really bad. So there's a bunch of running. And then the leprechaun pretends to be Bridget and he tricks him into giving, her, him, whoever, the coin because he like kisses him and he's like, come on, like if we leave the gold here, then the leprechaun will let us go. Like that's the only way to do it. And Cody's like, okay. And then Cody ends up getting impaled by the leprechaun. But obviously he ain't dead because he didn't give him the real coin. He gave him the chocolate coin from the leprechaun at the bar that came up to him while he was pissing at a urinal and gave him a chocolate coin. So obviously he doesn't die because he can't die. He's our protagonist. And instead he impales the leprechaun, who then explodes. And then they run out of the tree while the leprechaun is exploding and they're like, we did it. And then she's like, how did you know that that wasn't me? And he says the words, he kisses differently than you. And then she says, well, is it better or worse? And then he goes, I'll have to think about it. And those are the last lines of the film. That's it. That's what we're left with. Like, what? And then it like shows them like running down the stairs, and then there's like a weird like peck kiss, and then the movie just like cuts and is like abruptly ended. And it felt very like that was a mistake. Like there should be more to the film than that. It's so bad, y'all. And I didn't even talk about their outfits this time. Like Bridget wears this like awful white button-up shirt that's just not flattering on like literally anybody. And then Cody's dressed just like a typical 90s teenager. Morty is dressed like a typical weird old dude from the 90s. Like they all kind of have like their like dress that's like just kind of like how they look in the 90s. And then there's Bridget, who's just like wearing like business casual for whatever reason, and like doesn't, and she's such a bad actress, dude. It's so unfortunate. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have for Leprechaun 2. I know I kind of flew through that movie. But honestly, it's one of those that I feel like you have to see to like really appreciate. Like any of the movies that I talk about on this podcast, you need to immediately go watch because they're so funny or they're really good. I know I haven't done a review of a good movie yet. But I'm going to. I have Silence of the Lambs planned. It's just one of my favorite films, and I don't want to like do it. I don't want to do it dirty. You know, I want to do it justice. But it's definitely on the list of doing like good horror movies as well as these sort of like bad ones. But Leprechaun, dude, iconic, like truly iconic. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this episode. If you guys don't know already, I upload episodes every Monday at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They go up on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere that you listen to anything in the world. They're pretty much there, and it's cool, and you should continue to listen to it if this is your first time. And if you've been listening for a while, thank you so much. Earlier today, actually, we reached 4,000 downloads, which is really exciting. That's going to date when you guys know that I recorded this, but it was just very exciting, and it made me really, really happy to see that I was able to get so many downloads in the past, like little over a year. It just means so much to me. If you guys are interested in supporting the show in any other way, feel free to check out patreon.com/whispers from below. There's tons of cool rewards. And the more support I get, the more cooler stuff I can put out for you guys. If you guys have any episode ideas that you were thinking of, or you were like, oh, I'd love to hear more about this topic or this topic, please let me know. You can either send me a DM on Instagram, which is whispers from below, no spaces, no underscores, no capitals, no nothing. Or you can use the contact page on my website, whispersfrombelow.com, to just reach me and let me know that you had an episode idea. I love doing your episode ideas. It's usually stuff that I either don't know a lot about or didn't think anybody would be interested in, and then somebody is, and so I want to make that a thing. I want to make that happen for you guys. Again, the website has episode downloads. It's got merch that's really cute. You can go check it out. It's really high quality stuff, and it is super cool and adorable. I spent time, designing it all, and I think it looks really great. So definitely go check that out as well. If you're interested in my personal life at all, it's at JUTIN_geese, like the animal. It's just like makeup, me and my dog, my boyfriend and I. It's like not anything super interesting, and like my political views. It's pretty much what my Instagram is. So if you're interested in anything like that, feel free to go take a look over there. Thank you guys so much for listening, and remember, Leprechaun 2 is truly a masterpiece. The homosexual barista is the best part of the film, and if you don't watch anything else in the movie, you should at least go look up the clip of the barista, because oh my god, is it just amazing. And we're still in a pandemic. Even with the vaccine, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but we gotta stay safe, guys.